I still can't. There we go. All right. Welcome back, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Ryan Selkis. I'm the managing director at CoinDesk. Hope you're all having a terrific conference this week. We've been blown away. This is a real honor to introduce 5 finalists for our second annual Proof of Work competition. 5 terrific startups. So give a round of applause in advance for all 5 of the finalists. We had 85 submissions and 12 semifinalists, and then I think this year's crop is insanely talented. It's certainly exceeded expectations. And last year we had a pretty good group too. So 2 of those companies went on to raise money, and we acquired a third that was in the final. So maybe one of you guys will join the CoinDesk family at some point in the next year. So I want to just give a quick background on how this is going to work. Slightly different format from last year. We wanted to lead off with the presenters and the finalist presentations this year. So we're going to have the 5 finalist teams come up, 5 minutes to pitch, 3 minutes of Q&A with our expert panel of judges, who I'm going to introduce real quickly. They are going to then take the stage after the 5 presentations. First 5 to 10 minutes of their segments, they're going to be discussing what they liked, what they thought were strong points, what were areas that they would want to see improvement on, to the extent that there were weak points in the pitches, so that the entrepreneurs in the room get a better sense of what actually goes inside the head of a venture capitalist in this industry. That's going to be followed immediately by another 40 minutes where they discuss more broad trends that they're seeing in the ecosystem and some of their investment theses for the next couple of years. So without further ado, I want to start off by introducing our expert panel of judges. First, we've got, and maybe you guys can just wave and since your backs are to the audience, Matt Rozak, who's co-founder of Block and Tally Capital. We've got Dan Moorhead from Pantera Capital. We've got Lisa Chang from Bambex Group. Rumi Morales from CME Ventures. Brad Stevens from Blockchain Capital. And of course, William Ugayar from the Business Blockchain, the author of the Business Blockchain. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce John Garretts, who's our first presenter of today. He is the CEO of Oaken.
Thank you, Ryan, and good morning, everybody. Again, my name is John Garretts. I'm co-founder and CEO of Oaken Innovations. I've been in the cryptocurrency space now for about 4 years and headed up a number of smaller projects within mostly the Ethereum ecosystem. And Oaken Innovations is kind of a culmination of all that hard work over the years. So Oaken's product is an automated, blockchain-based, Internet of Things, hardware and software platform built to power industrial IoT, smart cities, and consumer products. Oaken's platform allows for automated machine-to-machine communication, logic, and value transfer. Let's take a look at the problems we're trying to solve. In the middle, you can see what most of us probably read in a Wired article from 2016, which is a Jeep Grand Cherokee that was hacked remotely and driven into a ditch. On the right, you see a device that tells Google when you're at home most often. And on the far left, we see the result of what happens when mistakenly an employee of AWS types in an improper command and brings down a good portion of their centralized server farm. Oaken's product, built on our underlying hardware security module and our blockchain-based software, gives us a platform to solve those problems, specifically privacy, security, and decentralization. And because we're based on the blockchain, we're able to bake identity and value transfer for every device. Let's move on and take a look at one of our devices and how that interacts with our platform. On the left-hand side here, we have, for a liquid measurement solution, on the left-hand side here, we have a water recipient and a water meter. So as the water is used, it's tallied on IPFS, and we can bill against that tally using a smart contract on the Ethereum platform of all that hard work over the years. So Oaken's product is an automated, blockchain-based, Internet of Things, hardware and software platform built to power industrial IoT, smart cities, and consumer products. Oaken's platform allows for automated machine-to-machine communication, logic, and value transfer. Let's take a look at the problems we're trying to solve. In the middle, you can see what most of us probably read in a Wired article from 2016, which is a Jeep Grand Cherokee that was hacked remotely and driven into a ditch. On the right, you see a device that tells Google when you're at home most often. And on the far left, we see the result of what happens when mistakenly an employee of AWS types in an improper command and brings down a good portion of their centralized server farm. Oaken's product, built on our underlying hardware security module and our blockchain-based software, gives us a platform to solve those problems, specifically privacy, security, and decentralization. And because we're based on the blockchain, we're able to bake identity and value transfer for every device. Let's move on and take a look at one of our devices and how that interacts with our platform. On the left-hand side here, we have, for a liquid measurement solution, on the left-hand side here, we have a water recipient and a water meter. So as the water is used, it's tallied on IPFS, and we can bill against that tally using a smart contract on the Ethereum platform. On the right-hand side, we have the water provider who receives payment for that usage in a pure peer-to-peer manner, utilizing strictly decentralized and distributed systems, namely Ethereum and IPFS. Moving on to a little bit more of a sophisticated proof of concept. This is something that we built out and enabled us to win first place in the inaugural UAE virtual blockchain GovHack in February. And this is was a Tesla and toll booth, essentially a car wallet solution. So moving on from the previous proof of concept, we're now moving to a true machine-to-machine interaction or a true machine-to-machine transaction between an Ethereum wallet in the car and an Ethereum node built into a mock toll gate. With this solution, what we're able to do again is completely replace all the traditional server infrastructure that you would normally use to deploy this type of a solution, and we're able to replace that with decentralized and distributed systems. This proof of concept for us has recently gained us some traction with Toyota Research Institute, and we started to partner with them. We had a press release that came out yesterday announcing an open blockchain mobility ecosystem that we're looking to build out. And further building on the toll booth example, we've developed a proof of concept for a car share application where you can register a vehicle to the blockchain, and then on the flip side, from the consumer end, you can then go rent that vehicle. As soon as your tokens or your payment for use of that rented vehicle goes into an escrow smart contract, you're then able to lock, unlock, and start the ignition of that vehicle for the duration of time that you've rented it for. Moving on to our business model. Our business model is twofold. We're looking to gain revenue from both sales of service and sales of goods. So the sales of service would be licensed smart contracts and also smart contract development, and then also our blockchain IoT gateway, and those two packaged together to build out for our partners. We're also currently brainstorming around recurring transactional revenue, which is essentially any transaction that goes through our hardware or goes through our smart contracts, we're able to realize a portion of that value. In regards to our competition, most people in the room will recognize everyone on this slide. We have Slockit, who is very active in the Ethereum community. Slockit just had a $2 million raise recently. And then there's these other small companies. The majority of companies on this slide, as much as they're on our competition slide, we also view them as partners. In fact, some of these companies we've been in touch with and are working with on different initiatives, different alliances, and starting to build those relationships. We have an amazing team. Collectively, we have about 15 years of blockchain experience, and just a very well-rounded team, from Lainey, who does our front-end UI, UX, visual designer by trade. Lex has a master's in computer science and was also an intern for Monax Aris Industries. Hudson Jameson, previously with the Ethereum Foundation, also our heavyweight when it comes to smart contract work. James Johnson, also previously was a VP for a tech firm in Dallas, and myself. Current status of the company: we are a registered U.S. corporation. Again, we're partnered with Toyota Research Institute currently for proof of concept. We're going through the onboarding process right now for the Trusted IoT Alliance, which is a collection of companies, including the likes of Cisco, and IBM and Chronicled to work together to start to build out standards revolving around blockchain and IoT. And we will be looking for funding in the fourth quarter of 2017. Thank you very much.
John, I have a question.
Yes.
Blockchains are, of course, great when there's an issue with trust. In the example of the water consumer and the provider, most people trust their water company. Most water companies can cut your water off if you don't pay. So what's the issue here?
So a water meter is a specific use case. It can also be built out to, let's say, oil or gas delivery. I guess the most important part there, and what really our focus is to transition to these decentralized systems. Not only do we believe there's a benefit, like you had mentioned, to eliminate trusted third parties, but we also think there's a great cost reduction there to not have to rely on these centralized systems. Also, again, referring to the AWS example, when you're operating on centralized systems, a small error can affect a large portion of that ecosystem. So when you're building on top of decentralized systems, you have that redundancy, a great amount of redundancy built in.
Thanks. Congrats on the Toyota deal. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Can you click for more detail on your identity model? I think it's a really important piece of your stack.
Yes, so currently we're doing some research ourselves on identity, but we're also looking to partner. That's a possibility for us as well. There's numerous teams. We're trying to focus on what we're good at. There's other teams that are focusing on identity, so that's an option. But truth is, we are also investigating that ourselves. Not many details for you on that at this time.
So then, ultimately, on the software piece, what would you license, or what would be the you mentioned hardware, services? Those are okay and okay categories. What about like a software piece? Like what does that at scale look like for you?
So essentially, it's licensing of the smart contract work. So basically, in order for us to connect with a partner and deploy a solution with them, we would license that software to them.
I have a question about your recurring revenue comment. So would that be in terms of transaction fees in the Ether network that you would then put into a SaaS model? Yeah,
so that's actually a very good question, because as we're kind of working through that, there's obviously, we're in a space where the technology moves faster than you can almost keep up with it. So it definitely would be for the payment of the services, not necessarily the transaction cost, because once we get into payment channels or even a newer technology that's coming out where they eliminate the transaction fees, it couldn't really be based on transaction fee, but rather the cost or the payment for the services that are being offered.
And because it's an industrial, area that you're going after, what would that transaction or SaaS fee look like for these companies?
Like as far as dollars? Mm-hmm. So everything's very proof of concept at this point, so we haven't had an opportunity to work long enough or far enough with a partner to really figure out those numbers yet. So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Man who needs no introduction.
Hello, my name's Will Warren. I'm excited to be here today with my co-founder, Amir Bandiali, to talk to you about 0x, the first crypto token protocol for decentralized exchange. This project has been in the works for almost a year now, and over that period, we've accumulated a great list of advisors, partners, and investors. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, I'll be able to communicate why we've been able to do that. So the world is becoming tokenized. Tokens and value are rapidly accumulating on the Ethereum blockchain. Today, there are around 16 ERC20 tokens on the Ethereum blockchain, tokens that were released in ICOs. And the combined value of all these tokens represents over $1 billion of value. There are also over 100 different decentralized applications today. In our view, by 2020, there will be many thousands of tokens on the Ethereum blockchain, representing a range of different assets from traditional securities like stocks and bonds, all the way to scarce digital goods like video game items. And these thousands of tokens will represent tens to hundreds of billions of dollars of value. We also believe that by 2020, there will be many thousands of decentralized applications, each with their own token. And naturally, all of these tokens are going to need a way to be exchanged. The current ecosystem on the Ethereum blockchain, there are numerous different decentralized exchanges that already exist today. There are also a variety of different decentralized applications that require exchange functionality in order to work, like prediction markets, for example. The issue is that each one of these different projects creates their own proprietary smart contracts from scratch, and that means that each dApp must bootstrap liquidity, and there is also no interoperability between any of these different projects. For the end user, what this means is that you have to trust 20 different smart contracts with your valuable digital assets when each one of these smart contracts does the exact same thing. It also means that you have to deal with many different configuration processes and learning curves, which is not a very good user experience. So our thesis is that smart contracts should act as modular, unopinionated building blocks that can be assembled and reconfigured. And we also believe that open standards tend to win out in the long run. So what is 0x? 0x is the very first crypto token protocol that facilitates peer-to-peer exchange on the Ethereum blockchain. 0x is a system of smart contracts that any entity or smart contract can plug into. It's publicly accessible, and you can instantly start executing trades. One of the most interesting aspects of 0x is that it allows other smart contracts to execute trades in a single line of code. We believe that this will lead to much more sophisticated decentralized applications in the future. So just last week, we released our very first user-facing product. We're very excited about it. It's called 0x OTC, and it facilitates over-the-counter trading. So this shows a demo. What you see here is someone generating an order, cryptographically signing the order, and broadcasting it over any arbitrary communication channel. So for example, you can generate an order, and you can broadcast it to the world on Twitter, and any counterparty that sees this order may then go and execute a trade with you. This shows the other side of the process. Someone receives an email with a bit.ly link from a known counterparty, and they click on the link, and they're able to go and execute a private over-the-counter trade. It's completely trustless, and all of this is occurring on the Ethereum blockchain. So we've been working on 0x for just about a year now. We released our white paper in February. I would highly encourage everyone here to check it out if you're interested in learning more. We deployed our contracts to the Kovan network just about a month and a half ago. We launched 0x OTC just last week, and it looks like this slide might have gotten cut off, but we're about to go through security audits, deployed to the main Ethereum network in the next month or so, and then we're going to launch our native token, ZRX. We're working with some of the best law firms in the space, including Perkins Coie and MME, to make sure that we launch our token in the most transparent and compliant way possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that presentation. Can you tell me what you're thinking about regarding regulation and how you're preparing for any regulatory policy developments in this space?
Right. So we're focused on developing the protocol layer that allows people to execute trades and do exchange, but we're not actually going to be operating a decentralized exchange ourselves. So in much the same way the Ethereum Foundation created Ethereum and released it to the world, and people can do what they want with it, that's what we're doing with 0x. There very well might be decentralized exchanges that use 0x to, facilitate exchange, but they do KYC, AML, and all, comply with all the regulations out there.
So who needs to install this, and who is the end user?
Say again?
So who needs to install your software? Is it the exchanges or is it the end user as a consumer that will be using it?
So 0x OTC is user-facing, meaning that you can go and do private over-the-counter trading with anyone in the world without having to trust any middleman. We're also building developer tools that will allow anyone in the world to spin up their own decentralized exchange and compete with Shapeshift. So really we're focusing on 3 different areas: user tools, developer tools, and research and development, so that we can integrate new cryptographic primitives into 0x, like zero-knowledge proofs for privacy.
Well, sorry, was there anything else? What role does the token play in your architecture?
Right, so the 0x token plays a critical function in the protocol. So the protocol's business logic is implemented within an Ethereum smart contract, and Ethereum smart contracts are immutable, meaning that they can't be changed over time. But 0x is also built on a rapidly evolving technology stack, which is Ethereum at the protocol level is changing rapidly. The EVM and the smart contract programming languages, these are all very new, and it's very early days. So we need to be able to update 0x over time and allow it to be future-proof. So the token will allow the protocol and the smart contracts to be upgraded over time without disrupting markets and invalidating entire order books, if that makes sense. It's also used to incentivize people to create their own decentralized exchanges. So in Bitcoin, the miners earn transaction fees for securing the network. In 0x, exchanges earn these 0x tokens for facilitating exchange.
Will you be able to evolve beyond just Ethereum tokens?
Right now, we're focused on the Ethereum blockchain because the network effects are very strong and tokens are being pulled onto the Ethereum blockchain. And that's kind of where we see most value accumulating in the long run. But we're also focused on generalizing the protocol so that it can be ported to other blockchains.
Well, what are the differences between 0x and Gnosis's plan, ERC-20 on-chain?
Right. So specifically in terms of how the exchange works?
Yeah.
Okay. So Gnosis is focused on using state channels for exchange. And state channels, to simplify it, you accumulate many intermediate state changes off the blockchain, and then you settle them all at once in a single transaction on the blockchain. 0x is slightly more efficient and less friction cost for market makers, in that you don't have to make one Ethereum transaction to open a channel, place a safety deposit into the channel to ensure that everyone is behaving honestly, and then close the channel with a second transaction. And state channels, there's also a challenge period during which a counterparty can sort of challenge the end state. Without getting too into the technical details, 0x allows you to execute trades trustlessly just using a single Ethereum transaction, so it massively reduces the cost for market makers.
Great. And what's your business model?
So we're structured very much like the Ethereum Foundation, where 0x protocol is completely non-rent seeking, meaning that every trade that occurs is completely free, and our development team doesn't receive any benefit from that, other than the fact that the protocol is being used. So in the same way that the Ethereum Foundation received a pre-mine of Ethereum tokens, and their incentives are to maximize the utility of these tokens, we have a pre-mine of 0x tokens, and our incentives are to maximize the utility of these tokens by creating the best tools and infrastructure that support the protocol.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Will.
Thank you.
Next, we have Doug Pitkanix, founder of Livestream, or LivePeer. Sorry, I gave you much more credit.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Hi, everyone. I did not invent live streaming, but we're trying to bring live streaming to everyone. So I'm Doug Pitkanix. I'm founder of LivePeer from here in New York City, and we're working on decentralized live video broadcast platform that's incentivized by a crypto token protocol. Anyone can broadcast a video into LivePeer from their camera, their screen or laptop, their webcam, from their phone. In fact, my co-founder, Eric Tang over here, is live streaming this from his phone right now into the LivePeer network. We've tweeted out a link on our Twitter account at livepeer.org for the centralized viewers among us that want to watch it on the internet. And what our network does is it allows any broadcaster to send a stream into LivePeer, and the network will take care of doing all the computation to transcode that stream into all the formats and bit rates necessary to reach every device on the planet across all the different connection speeds at as large a scale as is requested by the number of viewers in a decentralized and peer-to-peer way. So live video on the internet is growing like crazy across many categories, including social, events, sports, gaming like Twitch and whatnot. All these providers that you see either have to build their own infrastructure or build on the same closed, proprietary solutions by very few providers that can cost from $4,500 for one media server instance to $3 per hour per stream through a cloud provider, or $1,500 a month per stream for a CDN before bandwidth costs. And the computational requirements of this infrastructure are going to grow exponentially in the next 5 years due to the arrival of 4K video, Ultra HD, virtual reality, and 360 streaming, and all the cord cutting that's going on, where broadcasts are moving off of traditional pipes and onto the internet and over-the-top streaming. It's a $30 billion industry right now, growing to about $71 billion in just 4 short years. So in order to keep up with this demand, we need a cheaper, more scalable solution, and peer-to-peer and decentralization can provide that. In fact, peer-to-peer CDNs can cut costs by 80% by taking load off of central services, and that's huge to these broadcasters. In the past, peer-to-peer technology has worked, but there's never been the incentives to create a network of the scale required to support the needs of these broadcasters. But crypto token protocols and crypto economics change all that, and for the first time, now it's possible to incentivize a large network to form that can solve this problem for the future needs, and that's what we're super excited about building at LivePeer. So how can LivePeer be cheaper than an existing network? So paying an existing provider right now, they need to charge you their cost of service plus their margin. In a decentralized network, all of you can run LivePeer nodes, and you can contribute your CPU, your GPU, and your bandwidth in exchange of servicing live video, and you'll earn newly minted crypto token, the same way Bitcoin miners earn new Bitcoin. That token's value that you're earning actually offsets what you need to charge to the broadcaster in order to break even. That's really powerful. If you're starting with a cheaper network, that kicks off a token flywheel that creates an amazing economic effect. Cheaper network brings broadcasters. Broadcasters need LivePeer token in order to broadcast video. So that gives the token a potential value. As you've seen, miners or people running hardware compete to get that token early in the history of the network. So they're running the best hardware and providing the most bandwidth to create the highest quality of service possible for broadcasters. That creates a cheaper network, which feeds back to the top of this flywheel and overcomes the chicken and the egg problem, where you actually have the supply side at scale to support whatever demand comes in due to the nature of these tokens and crypto economics. I'm excited about how it can be a cheaper solution for businesses, but I'm also really excited about what can be built that wasn't possible before due to decentralization and crypto token payments baked in. I think uncensorable live journalism is a really important use case. Live broadcasts are one of the first things to get cut off out of a conflict zone or in a region that has less freedoms than we have here in the United States. And with peer-to-peer video on LivePeer, it's way more difficult to censor content. I'm excited about baking payments into video applications because I think it allows everyone to have a voice and participate in the world economy regardless of location or access to traditional payment rails. So people can monetize their time through online courses and screen shares, through entertainment, pay-as-you-go expert networks, and even professional services like Doctor on Demand and telepsychiatry are all possible to now integrate payments natively, accessible to all, and not just people with a US-based credit card. Quick update on the project is that Eric and I have been working on this for about 6 months. Our white paper is published and it defines the secure economic protocol that can verify that all the work is done on the network correctly and make sure the token is secure. We have a toy network running without incentives right now. We're broadcasting into it right now, implementing our protocol. We'd like to get to a test net and a token distribution in under 6 months and be on a production network shortly after that. Building on top of Ethereum, Swarm, IPFS, WebRTC to make low latency peer-to-peer streaming possible in the browser, mobile, and all the platforms where people consume video today. Eric and I have been building together for 7.5 years across 2 companies. We have a successful exit under our belt. We have great support from the ecosystem on this project as well, and we think it's our biggest opportunity yet and the thing we're most excited about. We're really excited to bring peer-to-peer live video broadcasting to the world and make it a reality. You can find us at livepeer.org, and we're around to talk to anyone about this project the rest of the week. Thank you.
You know, censoring is kind of a double-edged sword in there. You know, in one sense, there's conflict zone, and you want to go and let people have a voice and not get shut down. Flip side is that you have the Facebook stuff that occurred with someone filming someone killing themselves or killing someone else. Are you going to integrate any type of ability to get in and remove things, filter things, and have some type of content control?
Yep, definitely. So we're an open platform for infrastructure the same way that a protocol like HTTP supports just data being sent across the wire. And I think there's 2 great opportunities to deal with content protection. One is at the application layer. So if someone is building a great social video platform or embedding video into their decentralized Reddit or Medium, they can address it using centralized means like they would use today. Or I actually think that's a great opportunity for a second project, which is a sort of decentralized curation DAO, because all social platforms are going to have the problem of needing to deal with content protection rights for their users, and that's something we look forward to contributing.
And structurally, are you a company that is going to have the foundation take your portion of the tokens from the sale as the way you guys pay yourselves, or will you guys actually have a software sales that you could go out to someone that does streaming and sell them a package to go use to lower their costs?
Yep, LivePeer is focused on the former. We're building the infrastructure and the protocol. Having built a platform company in the past, I know you have to create your own demand for the platform, and I think we're well positioned to be involved in the creation of a separate SaaS entity that hides all of the token stuff from any existing broadcaster and just says, hey, we have a cheaper, more scalable, pay-as-you-go broadcast solution. Don't even worry about tokens. We'll wrap that. And I think that's another big opportunity. And I'm willing to be involved in that, but hopefully that's something that 30 different entrepreneurs all create separate services across verticals because it's great for the protocol.
You touched upon awesome use cases and the flywheel, which I think is fantastic. The crypto economics, getting that network effect going is, I think, critical. You see a lot of projects at ICOs, great idea, great team, white paper, ICO, and then kind of the work begins, right? And what is in your fantasy land, what are the 2 or 3 partners that you get early on that kind of get that flywheel and give it ignition?
Yep, there's 2 angles to come at it from. One is bottom up, which speaks to the decentralized development community and these new applications that couldn't have been built before. And as you see in that ecosystem, it's early, and we're still waiting for these dApps to emerge. But another ideal partner are the existing live streaming service providers that are excited to test this, that see it just as an opportunity to potentially save money. And they already have existing customers who don't even need to know what their internal infrastructure looks like. So they can test 3% of their traffic on LivePeer and find that it's a hopefully cheaper solution in the early days and start to drive more and more on top of it until it powers the infrastructure. I think that the big opportunity is that LivePeer is just running inside of every browser, every phone, every data center, and it becomes the protocol by which live video is transmitted over the internet.
Cheaper cost and then revenue opportunity for them as well. You can enable them to kind of open up that opportunity.
Sure, yep.
All right, thank you, Doug. Much more exciting than just a mere live stream. So. All right, next we have the founder of HealthWiz, Raj Sharma.
I'm Raj Sharma, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of HealthViz. With here today is Shirish Bajpai, who's also a co-founder and CTO of HealthViz. Between Shirish and I, we have several years of building distributed applications that are highly scalable, peer-to-peer distributed applications. And our third co-founder, Dr. Nitin Desai, who's our chief medical officer, has several years of experience in healthcare and healthcare IT. Our medical records are scattered all over the place. Some of them are with hospitals, some of them are in clinics, labs, pharmacies, insurance companies, some of them are even on old-fashioned paper. And we are generating even more data with our wearables, as well as when we ask companies like 23andMe to sequence our genome. The problem is that today, you cannot turn to one place to get your health records. And that's not going to change anytime soon. Why am I so sure? Well, late last year, my mother had a fall, and she had to be admitted to the emergency room twice in 2 different hospitals. They couldn't find anything wrong with the first hospital. She had to be admitted again when she complained of pain. Both these hospitals in the same town, they were exchanging her records and her images using fax machines. And to make matters worse, one of the hospitals even repeated some of the tests that were done by the other hospitals because they were not readily accessible. We are going to change all this at HealthViz. We are going to revolutionize your personal health records. And the way we are going to do that is by creating a highly personalized electronic health record system just for you, or an EHR of one. Now, we know this is a multi-billion-dollar problem, and probably an incredibly difficult problem to address. But there are 3 things that are happening that are very encouraging. 1, healthcare regulation. There are mandates from the government that say that all systems that are being used by hospitals and doctors must allow medical records to be accessible electronically by patients. Starting January 1st, 2018, as a user, if I'm using an app, then these hospitals and doctors' offices must allow my medical records to be accessible by my app. Second, healthcare standards. There is a new emerging standard called Fast Health Interoperability Resources, or FHIR. That promises, and it is being widely adopted, but it promises to make data interoperable and interchangeable amongst different systems. So to date, and number 3 is our team. We think we are very well suited to address this problem. And to date, we have built a distributed mobile application that essentially aggregates data from different sources. And what we want to do is take the next step and make this data accessible on a blockchain. And that's the reason why we are launching into our process of fundraising. We also have a pilot going on for members of a health club and employees of a hospital in North Carolina. And the early feedback we are getting is that once users aggregate their data, they want to do more things with it. And we believe that with our HealthViz app, we envision a future where you'll never have to ever scramble for your health records again. Using our app, you'll be able to aggregate data from different sources, and then the app will organize it so it can be readily accessible using this new standard called FHIR. Your data will be with you wherever you go, as long as you have your phone with you. Now, this is a very unique EHR of one, because you have your clinical data as well as your genetic data with you all the time. And that has tremendous implications on medical research as well as personalized medicine. So how do we go from the EHR of one to a marketplace of health records? Well, once you collect your clinical data as well as your genetic data on your phone or on your private cloud, based on the pilot feedback that we are getting and from other sources, we realize that people want to do more with their data. They want to share it. Perhaps you want to share it with a medical research organization. Or maybe you want to share it with your data with a pharmaceutical company who is designing personalized medicine for you. Or maybe you just want to sell your data, your medical data, to data brokers. Now, all these are smart contracts running on a blockchain. Oh, by the way, there is a multi-billion-dollar medical records data bazaar industry going on where they are selling our records without our knowing and without us getting anything out of it. But now, by digitizing these records and into assets and making them available on a blockchain, every time you share your record with another entity, you get rewarded with a digital token. And every time a transaction occurs, we take a small transaction fee, and that's our business model. We have had some early successes, as I mentioned, with the pilots. We are getting a lot of we are in the early stages, but we are getting a lot of good feedback from the members of the health club as well as from the employees of the hospital. We have demonstrated interoperability with Cerner and Epic, with the two major EHR vendors in the space. And we are also talking to Cerner for a partnership as well. And then we are also talking to some clinical research organizations because we think that this data that people are collecting could make them very active participants in clinical researches, studies. So besides the three co-founders, this is our team of developers and UI UX designers. We are based out of Washington, D.C., and our app is currently available in beta state on App Store as well as on Google Play. Thank you.
So this is a massive opportunity. It's like identity, health records. This is like one of those big oceans to kind of boil in with blockchain tech. How do you start? Like, what's the initial utility of the app that kind of gets going here?
Yeah, so we recognize that, and what we have done is essentially, first step is to enable users to aggregate their medical records and organize them, and also get data from wearables. And what we are seeing is, and again, this is from the pilot, that people actually want to start playing with that data. Even before putting it on a blockchain, they want to start forming challenges and making it social so that, for validation purposes, they are using data from wearables to compete in challenges with their peers. We think that the employers would be interested in a wellness program as well. So you're right, and what we've done is first, focus on the content, and if the users aggregate the content, then there are lots of other adjacent markets that you can go to.
Your competitors out there, there's a massive amount of money that's gone into this space to fund, digital medical health records. You go and you sell to a hospital, and you go maybe bite off one hospital, and your competitor goes and knocks down another hospital. So you've got all these kind of disparate silos of digitized records. Their business model is contingent upon getting network effects to hopefully have all the hospitals move to one of them, not the others. How do you get to even compete with that, or even theoretically get them to interoperate at a lower level when people are so entrenched on trying to be the digital record of choice for all the hospitals and push out the rest? Yeah,
so we are not focused. So this is where most of the money has been invested, billions of dollars, and everybody is chasing providers. Everybody is chasing the EHR vendors because that's where the money is. We are actually not even concerned, or I shouldn't say concerned, but we are not even talking to any of the hospitals or any of the providers. The reason is we are focused on the end user. The end user does have the right to get and aggregate all their medical records on the private cloud or on their phone. They own that data, they control it, they manage it. So that's where we are focusing on. Now, while all our competitors, like you said, are all focused on selling it to providers, selling it to hospitals, but that's a very different business model. We are focused on the consumers.
So how are you doing this aggregation specifically? Because that is that's a very hard problem, isn't it?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there are two things. One is the regulation. The government mandates that all hospitals and all doctors' systems must make those records available to the user on the patient portal, and the user should be able to download that data, all the data from hospitals as well as doctors' offices. Now, what is happening is that only 40% of the people are even aware that this is available to them. And if they go on this patient portal once, only 10% of them come back. And that's because the patient portal that hospitals have and the doctor's offices have are very poorly designed. They are not user-friendly. But again, starting January 1st, 2018, they are asking the EHR vendors to implement APIs so that an app can talk to these systems. So that's how we'll leverage it.
Raj, I get your assertion that individuals want their health records, they want to manipulate it, they want to see it. Most individuals couldn't care less about blockchain. Why can't you do this as a centralized database, and why is it blockchain?
15 seconds.
So you're right. The users don't care about blockchain, but I think most of the people are lazy, and they are not going to do this unless there is an incentive to do this, right? And we think that the incentive is to cut out the middlemen, the data brokers, and go sell this data directly to pharmaceutical companies and get rewarded for it. And that could change user behavior. On their own, you're right, the users are not going to do a whole lot. But if there is an incentive, then they might.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raj.
Thank you.
All right. Last but certainly not least, we have the founder of Credit Dream from Brazil. Thank you for making the trip. Edmilson Rodriguez, take it away.
Hello, good morning. My name is Edmilson Rodriguez. I'm the CEO of Credit Dream. And I'm having a slight problem with the slides.
I can bring the backup dancers while you're waiting.
All right, or I can start verbally, right? Credit Dream, we are from Brazil, all right? All right, it's here. We are addressing the problem of access to credit, right? The problem of access to credit is very relevant. In the world, 2.5 billion people do not have access to financial services like credit. And in Brazil, where we are from, 40% of the population, or 60 million people, are unbanked. For those who have access, there is the problem of cost, right? The average loan in Brazil is 145% interest per year. It's crazy high. So the access is due to the credit origination and the credit analysis, and the cost is due to the high cost of capital and the high default rate. And how we are going to solve this problem? We are developing two different applications. Meu Crédito app for the credit origination, and Swapi for to solve the problem of cost of credit. Meu Crédito is a better loan on your phone. You just download the app, make the loan origination, and if approved, the loan is deposited within 24 hours. We developed a proprietary credit analysis model, which is especially designed for the unbanked. We ran a pilot in Brazil where we had 9,000 loan requests and distributed 29 loans with a 60% average interest rate, a default rate of 22%, and an expected return on investment of 25%. So for every dollar that we put in, we got out $1.25. Swapi, on the other hand, is a decentralized application for Ethereum, which will connect international investors with local credit companies. So the investors will have a higher return and the borrowers will have a lower rate. So we are not peer-to-peer, we are actually peer-to-business. We will connect the credit companies with the investors so they can raise money for a lower rate and thus be able to lend at a lower rate. And we'll be able to earn 0.3% in every order and 0.5% per withdrawal. So for every $100,000 transacted, we will have $800 in revenue. So this is how our business model works. Meu Crédito, or other credit company, will start a fundraising offer on Swapi. Then the international investors will put their money to work, and Meu Crédito will lend to consumers. When they pay back, Meu Crédito will distribute through Swapi, which will then transfer the money to the investors. And why do we need the blockchain? Actually, this is only possible because of the blockchain, because of the automatic paybacks through the smart contracts, because there is the instant settlement and the auditability to the network. That's what will connect different jurisdictions around the world. So that's our vision for Swapi. a truly way to connect people all over the world and connect the credit markets and connect different credit companies around the world. Our team is made of me. I'm the CEO. I am a former Google employee. Tulio, who is the CTO, he has a master's in computer science, and Plinio, who is an awesome designer. We are also adding a COO and 2 developers to our team. In regard to competitors, we have the incumbents, the old banks who are dinosaurs, the innovators who are, for example, Nuverde in Brazil, who lends money through mobile phone, and the crypto lenders like BTC Gem, right? And then there is us. At first glance, it seems similar to what people were doing, but we are actually very different. For example, we are not doing the contracts in cryptocurrency, but actually in fiat currency. So there is not much oscillation. Also, we will not try to bypass the credit companies, but actually to work with them, because they can solve the compliance issues in every country. So we are actually learning from their mistakes. This is our roadmap. We just raised a small seed round from Draper Associates and here in Blockchain Ventures. And we plan to get into Accelerator in September, and by the end of the year to raise $3 million in order to give the next steps. And within 12 months, after raising $3 million, we expect to have a fully compliant credit company in Brazil, a fully functional exchange, and to be in at least 3 countries in Latin America. So Satoshi Nakamoto, the person or persons who started this whole thing, he had a dream that was to free people's money, right? And we like to think that we are building on this dream by allowing international access to credit. This is a small video on how the product works. Can you guys please click on the... All right, I think we can go straight to the questions if you want.
So dreamers like Satoshi, can see some interesting things, and then sometimes you run smack into regulators. What are the regulatory issues you're confronting, and how are you dealing with them? The regulatory issues, borrowing and lending to small businesses, small individuals, often gets highly regulated.
Yes. Actually, that's one thing why we are trying to work with the credit companies. Each country has a different regulation, and to operate in there, they already have solved the compliance issues. And also, in Brazil, one of the reasons why we have the highest interest rates is because we have the highest regulatory complexity, and we are talking with a lawyer firm in Brazil who is doing a study, and they are already know how to figure out the compliance issues. So if we can work in Brazil, make it work in Brazil, we can make it work anywhere.
Well, you have high interest rates because there's also a massive currency fluctuations you've had. I mean, probably in 2016, I'm gonna make a guess here, that the real probably fluctuated more or lost more value than Bitcoin by a huge margin in terms of its beta. How do you deal with addressing currency fluctuations from a US dollar investor coming in and lending to reals if all of a sudden it devalues by 2x?
That's a very good question. Actually, the exchange rate risk will fall to the credit company, not the investor. All the contracts will be made in dollars. And the credit company can choose to hedge that risk. That will be one of the services that we are going to offer. They can hedge. We are going to offer the possibility of them to hedge that risk.
Can you talk a little bit about security and the security of the technology platform that you're developing? Obviously, when people are entrusting, it's not just currency risk, but obviously they want to know that their funds are secure through you.
Sure. Well, the issue of security will be very well addressed, and we are going to do a test before running everything, and that's one of the best things about the blockchain technology. Because of the distributed ledger approach, it's highly secure.
Well, my hope is that you would not just outsource your security just dependent on a blockchain, but that you yourself would also be investing in the security of the technology that you're developing, correct?
Yes. And before launch, we will do an auditability test, so it won't happen like the DAO.
All right. Thank you very much. Another round of applause for all of our finalists. Okay, so we're going to move on to part 2 of this session. First, I want to start by saying, again, thank you to our finalists. And one of these teams is going to pitch on the main stage and give a 60-second elevator pitch later once it's determined who the actual winner is. This is probably the most valuable part of the session for any entrepreneurs in the room. We're going to invite our judges up to the stage. They're going to spend the first 5-10 minutes of their broader discussion on venture capital trends in the industry, on their specific feedback that they have and high-level thoughts they had from these 5 particular presentations. So we're going to invite them to take the stage now. And then after, would ask the judges not to deliberate and make a final decision on stage. We'll huddle up afterwards, and then we'll make the big announcements. And I get to hand out a big check again, which is always fun, later on this afternoon.
Actually, yeah.
All right.
11% interest rate for a while.
William, take it away.
Great. So, what do you guys think overall in terms of quick impressions of what we saw? My own take was, it was interesting that out of the 5, only one was really a very technology-specific company, that's 0x, and the other 4 were very much trying to solve a business problem. Maybe a year ago, I think it would have been the other way around. So that was my first observation. And I just open it up to what you guys think. What do you think?
I was surprised at how ambitious actually these companies were, and like the large problems that they were attempting to solve. But I was also surprised that so many revenue models were dependent on tokens. Right? Personally, I would have liked to see some actual more like standard ways of actually getting money, because it's one thing to have an idea, but you find it takes a long time to build a successful company. Token adoption is going to have to be a little bit more widespread, I believe, for a company to be able to gain the revenue traction in order to succeed. So I felt there should be some at least interim revenue model reliant on getting some dollars, not just reliant on the issuance of a token. That was me.
I think it's actually a fascinating inflection point in how technology is being rolled out. That in the past you had very simple protocols, and then all the value was hoarded by a couple big centralized entities, like Google or Facebook. And I'm excited to see all these decentralized applications coming out that are allowing the creators to gain a stake in what will then be, free system to use. So I thought it was very exciting.
And to your question on, what has changed last year versus this year, I think last year and prior years, you really had sort of Bitcoin or blockchain purists out there that were just obsessed with the technology and trying to figure out ways to change the world with it. I think as we've now gone mainstream, you can look at the size of this conference and look at the attendees that are here. You have people that have a great startup idea, and their next step is, how do I integrate blockchain into it? Not how do I take blockchain and build a company from there? So a lot of the questions as we were all listening to these people speak is popping into our heads. Does the database do this? Why do I need blockchain? What's the real point of decentralizing this? And that's a kind of a theme that we end up asking consistently is, do you need to be decentralized for this? Or are you doing it for the sake of being decentralized?
Do you think this was a weak point in some of these presentations, that it was not clear really why blockchain?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I felt that way. I didn't specifically ask the question, but sorry.
No, I agree completely with that. It's not necessarily that they need to be decentralized, but maybe it's the hot topic, and that's the kind of area that they're going for, to decentralize some records that are better suited for a standard database.
I mean, there were some big opportunities on the wall there with healthcare and transportation and big themes, and this goes to base models and ICO models, is that network effect, those crypto economics, and how those get driven. I think the more entrepreneurs think through those issues, like what would be my dream customer, my dream network, or the cooperative of users that do this, it's like I want to think through those metrics as well, because we're seeing a much better tech come out in the ICO ecosystem, and then just the party begins then. Maybe they have to finish out their technology and then launch it, but then how is it launched? And that's, I think, really important.
I think all of them are going to have the issue of customer acquisition.
Yeah. I agree.
So it's one thing to build the technology, but then you either have to sell it if it's a business, or you have to acquire users. And that's an issue, it's a challenge that any startup has. I mean, at the end of the day, all of these companies are startups. So with or without blockchain, they have to acquire users.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to start small. I think that was where I was going on the healthcare piece, is like these are elephants, right? And how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so what is that initial staircase step that builds the foundation for the rest of the utility of these things? And that's super important to get right.
On the topic of having a token sale and selling to an industrial enterprise customer, there's this huge disconnect of who is actually participating and speculating on these tokens, and will these enterprise industrial companies actually use them to pay for services? I don't think we've seen that yet.
I think it's a great point, and you have two flywheels going. You have the speculative token flywheel, which is in full bore, if anybody's watching, and then you have the blockchain utility, throughput, transaction volume, pricing, all that awesomeness that comes out of that app or that network or that protocol. And we still have a lot to do to see the utility piece of that.
I was going to add that I think that is a huge issue right now, that tokens and ICOs are a hot topic, and there are companies where the token is absolutely integral to the success of the network, like IPFS, Filecoin is how it works. But then there are a lot of other ventures where, like, people were trying to add Bitcoin 4 years ago to things, now they're trying to add a token, and there's really no reason for it.
Although I agree with that completely. This guy did an ICO on his venture fund, which in the abstract was interesting. It wasn't revolutionary, but it also shows the tokenization of assets, whether it's a LP interest, a REIT, asset management. It now will ripple and spawn ideas and innovation, and they'll look back at something like that. I think that's great. The other thing is the people issuing tokens today are whippersnapper entrepreneurs. The Vikings are like what CEO of Fidelity said. The Vikings in this ecosystem. I think over time, and I don't know if that's measured in a year or two or three, Toyota, maybe CME, some of these market leaders will be issuing their own tokens in the near term. It's my at least what I would see.
Great. So let's segue into discussing more the general environment that we are seeing in the fundraising space or venture capital space. You all see a lot of deals, and kind of tying it back to the point we just made a few minutes ago, that sometimes you kind of wonder why is there a token? The token is being inserted now. It's the new thing. What are you seeing in your deal flows? Are you seeing some deals where you still are wondering why is there a token? Is there a trend that you are kind of seeing that where this thing is going? Any more comments on what you are seeing, basically?
I mean, some business models can't exist without tokens. So it's, for example, like our ICO we did for our venture fund, we cannot provide liquidity to our limited partners without having that token. So that token enabled us to do something that the venture capital had never been able to offer to its investors for 60 years. We offered liquidity via the token. So you got to view tokens are what is it giving to the product or solution out there that was yet to be able to have done before, that this now is giving brand new fresh utility like nothing's been able to have solved before. And that's where tokens are really critical.
But obviously there are many other types of blockchain companies that are out there and different reasons for investing as well. For us at CME Ventures, recently we were actually looking at blockchain as it relates to other new technology trends, whether it's in AI or IoT, seeing how that's going to interact with them in the future. Our most recent public investment being Filament, as an example, right, of a wireless networking company utilizing blockchain, but I see it more as an IoT company. So I'm very excited about watching blockchain as a technology and how it's going to be, but in its interrelation or interaction with other new technology trends.
It's funny you said Filament, because I was thinking about them when I heard about from the first company, Oaken, who is also an IoT. Right. And Filament started without the blockchain, I think, and then they added blockchain afterwards.
As one possible rail for which you could be able to communicate or utilize for payments in the future.
Yes. So what's happening with the venture capital space? I mean, all of us here are more or less specialized and focused on the blockchain space. What do you think most of the other VCs are going to be doing? And as of now, it's a minority, basically. The ones that are investing heavily or have invested heavily in the blockchain are a minority. Is this going to change?
Well, I think it's actually a fascinating time where you've had $500 million go into tokens so far this year, $100 billion this week. And to put it in perspective, 1995's venture funding of internet was only half of that. It was 250 million. So you're getting this wave of money flowing into tokens, not equity. And there's a lot of venture firms, their funds preclude them from investing in tokens because they didn't really exist. They don't even know what they are. So I think you're going to see a bifurcation in the space where some of the old line venture firms that literally cannot invest in, cryptocurrencies, tokens, whatever you want to call them, ICOs. So it's going to be a pretty fascinating, next couple of years.
I think Dan's right. I think in the charter documents of the next fund, I think they're going to allow for some opportunity to invest in tokens. And 2-3 years ago, you go on Sand Hill Road, and there was it was a pilgrimage to kind of talk about what this ecosystem is. Bitcoin is good, and it was kind of surreal to think back on those days. Now, with the cryptocurrency market at 70 billion, whatever total market cap, and people love to extrapolate Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain. In many ways, they're inextricably linked because of the psychology and the way it pours into each of them. And every time there's like a DAO or a GOX or whatever, people kind of put the tools down for 6 months. And if you're a company funding in that time frame, you're kind of out of luck. Here, we're going through this incredible tsunami of innovation and token financings. And it's one of the use cases for blockchain, right? People are really using that to fund their projects. They're not all going to go to the moon, but it's an incredible amount of innovation that's happening right now.
Yeah, 3 years ago, you had most major VCs that are more generalist VCs dip their toe in the water and make a Bitcoin or blockchain investment. And then they basically all left, and they went away for 2 or 3 years. There's a few that have stayed around. And arguably, maybe that was the right call in there. And really the theme when you went and talked to them is they'd say, hey, show me a big exit. Show me my first unicorn. Show me liquidity. The irony flips real quick in the last 6 months that where's liquidity? Every single one of these ICOs is liquidity immediately. Tokens are the most liquid way to invest in this space. So when they used to be crying, there's no liquidity here, there's no exits, we've now built a system that is essentially exits from day one. So I think that's going to draw a lot more attention as people to realize, oh, this is a way to invest and basically have the flexibility to get in and out, much more like a stock. And it's going to change the psychology some.
So liquidity happens whether you are successful or not. That is kind of one of the change. It takes a while to realize whether a company is successful or not. And what changes now, just repeating what you said a little bit differently, is that on the way to success or on the way to failure, because eventually one of those two things happen, there is liquidity. And that's a very interesting dynamic. Where do you think that money is coming from then, all of this money that's being reinvested? I have just a guess that I think more than 3/4 of the money is recycled from previous gains. I don't think a lot of new money is coming in. You tell me, let's try to estimate a little bit. Is it like 3/4 recycled money, 1/4 from the outside? What are you seeing? What do you think the ratio is here? Because I haven't seen any research that has said for sure that's where it's coming from.
I think Consensus has done some good research on the flows into a couple of the recent ICOs, and most of it is people recycling gains in Ethereum. But something's driving all of the currencies generally up, and so there are lots of new investors. There's countries like Japan that went from absolutely zero cryptocurrency interest to formulating regulation. And Bitcoin and crypto is probably the one thing on earth that could use more regulation and it'd be better for the environment. And when you get the regulation in Japan, it exploded. And Korea is now the 4th biggest market for cryptocurrencies. Ripple's hugely popular in Korea, Ethereum. So you're seeing fresh money coming into the currencies themselves. and then the people who have held those things for a while are the ones taking the next step into the ICOs.
Can you comment, Brad? Because you just did your recent raise. Do you have any visibility on the ratio?
You know, we had 850 people invest in our ICO. 75% of them were under $1,000. 80 separate countries came in. So it's interesting to see the kind of the democratization of where the money does come from. And, you know, the good majority of it was coming through USD and Ether. So, you know, did people go buy Ether and Bitcoin? Did they go buy Bitcoin and Ether to invest in it when they could have sent us a wire? I doubt it. So I think right there you see a metric. What I'm excited to see, just from my own personal interest, is what happens when you truly have an uncapped ICO and see who shows up. If they have 30 days to buy into something unlimited with no cap, then there's not going to be a pop by definition. So at the end of that 30-day period, does it go up or down? You know, how much does come in? So how much of this market is playing this pop, this flip, this scarcity? You know, a lot of this isn't about technology, it's about psychology. These games of how you kind of get this FOMO feeling to make it feel like I got to buy this ICO in 10 minutes or I'm going to miss it is, you know, that's, you know.
But is that it, or is it more financial engineering? What do you guys think of the, we just saw, I think it was Gnosis that started this. They just issued a few, like a limited number of coins, and you just do the math and multiply by the other coins, and then you get some astronomical numbers for market cap. Is that really a market cap, or is this financial engineering?
The reverse Dutch auction, you mean? With setting a smart contract in Ethereum, you have to indicate how many tokens will ever be in existence, and that, in a sense, sets the market cap. But when we talk about traditional market cap, it's not the same thing, so I don't think we can really compare the two.
But that's an interesting change. I mean, this is not market cap, but it is market value, or what is it? I mean, it's one of the metrics that some people are looking at in estimating the value of these new applications, protocols. This is kind of new territory.
Well, and it's a big metric to look at differently when you go to, you know, CoinMarketCap and you toggle the little switch of total coins in circulation versus the actual total amount. You know, back from financial analysis, you know, total shares outstanding is what you really want to look at, totally out there. So a lot of these, like Gnosis, you know, it looks like it's a $100 million market cap, but it's actually more like 1.2 billion or something like that. And kind of figuring out how that works, and then the, you know, what is the rate that those are either locked up or vested becomes a big toggle in there. Can they flush out there, or can they slowly meter out? And that those types of metrics need to be much more standardized.
That's a great point. And I think the Gnosis was pressure testing some of this stuff and is creating an edge to some of these financings. And I think a good portion, like you said, 75% was the recycled piece. I'd say at least that much was the recycled winnings in this ecosystem. But then you see like a news article yesterday that like Brian Kelly was on CNBC saying $100 Bitcoin 7 years ago is now 72 million. And you see the market cap at 70 billion of all the cryptos. And then it kind of ushers in this whole new, you know, I missed out, can I still get in? Is Bitcoin 2200 the new 200, you know? And I think it lights up a whole new ecosystem of private investors, hedge funds, family offices, et cetera, that we're seeing now come into the space.
I'm seeing, or I'm hearing about a lot of new funds that are coming on the scene, some of them not announced. As some of you know, I'm running the Token Summit on Thursday, and I'm seeing at least more than a dozen new funds that have just coming on the scene. So this is going to be even easier, I think. If you're a startup, this is great. I mean, if you can fog a mirror, I think you'll be able to raise money in the coming months because there's a lot of money floating around, whether it's recycled money or whether it's new money that's coming in. I get emails on a daily basis telling me that somebody's raising a fund.
Well, I say this with all the love in my heart, but I wouldn't encourage that at all, honestly. I mean, maybe I'm naive or whatever, but I hope that if people want to build a company, you're truly out there to build a company, folks, not just to make money really quickly and walk away. And certainly there are other types of investors that are not touching ICOs, but are big believers in the promise of blockchain. a number of corporate investors continuing to get involved in the blockchain space. You saw the whole list with R3 this morning. So there are other opportunities here for investors. There's a lot of promise to build strong companies for the future.
Very true. Although it's easier to raise money, it's not easier to build a company. That has not changed. So starting up is easy, but finishing is this, if anything, is going to get more difficult because there'll be more competition, perhaps.
William, to your point, I think there is actually a role for professional fund management in the token space. There's hundreds of tokens now, and each one has a white paper and code you have to review. It's totally impossible for a retail investor to actually do the work and figure out which ones are going to be very, very important, and some of these are going to be unbelievably important, and then which ones are just kind of crowdsourced vaporware.
Yes.
On that topic, just because we're talking about ICO investors, because of this recent hype post-DAO that has led everyone to believe they can launch an ICO, make a bunch of money, and maybe not follow through on their plans, there's a lot of unsophisticated investors that are now participating. We're talking to people that can't even barely function a computer, and they're investing in ICO after ICO because they get that hit of instant liquidity. It's the wrong approach for a lot of companies to go through an ICO, and unfortunately that's the way the wind is blowing right now.
I totally agree. I've seen the same thing. And then you look at history in terms of like railroads needed all this money, and there was a railroad bubble. Internet, same thing. This industry needs a lot of capital to build out these new decentralized rails and all the endpoints and last mile and all these all the 100 layers to make these the utility of these blockchain technologies come to realization. And it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of risk. And I think effervescence in these new markets is a critical component. And the risk, the beta, is part of the oxygen in the room. So,
Are any of you smelling a bubble, or is this healthy activity?
Until regulation comes down.
I think it's fantastic. I think I don't use bubble because I used that I think 20 years ago in 1999. But I think it's effervescence, and I think I mean, you can't just say, okay, if it's going to cost this much money to kind of burnish these new rails and these new identity models and everything else, and it costs whatever, and I put that price tag on this table, nobody would sign up for that, right? It's going to take a process. It's going to take some trial and error. It's going to take some wins and losses. But this is, on the scale of internet or other technology themes, this is the best opportunity I've certainly seen in my career.
And I take like E-Trade in mid-90s. You take the ability and you give everyone in the room that never had the ability to go buy stocks, and you give them fuel to go out and buy as much stocks as they want really easily for very cheap. Right as you have an emergence of an exciting technology like internet, which helped to fuel it and create it, you put those together and you had a huge rise and a lot of value was created there. And I think we have a similar dynamic here where we're getting globally, people are being able to participate in startups. Much like how AngelList was able to crowdsource and really bring a lot more capital in a new structured way, and this whole crowdsourcing movement has been fantastic. This is doing the same thing, but a much more international way. It's not just accredited investors. It's anyone can participate protocol level on this exciting area. So that is capital that's never been touched, that is able to come into this ecosystem at a time when you're also having a lot of innovation at the time. And those two things are going to fuel for a while forward. And there will be bubble stocks, per se, or ICOs that just get wildly inflated and have nothing there and fail. And people will point and say, sure, and maybe certain ones will take down the ecosystem, just kind of a rising, lowering tide for a little. But I think in general, we still have a rising tide out there because there's a lot of new participants that have never been able to put money to work in this ecosystem.
And so part of the work that we're trying to do when we work with ICOs is to encourage them, if they're launching a coin, to, I guess, incentivize purchasers by something more than just price. Just because something is worth 50 cents today and $1 tomorrow is not a reason to buy. And we're seeing that a lot with ICOs, and that's where I think some losses are coming into the market and some negativity.
I'd say, the definition of bubble includes leverage, and there's no leverage in this market. Almost, it's like 98% of the purchases are done with cash. People are taking money, fiat money, converting it into Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever, and then they're buying ICOs. So although there probably are people buying into the projects that aren't going to work, and some things are going to be disappointing, I think you can't say it's a bubble because no one's levered, no one's going to be forced out of positions.
What can go wrong in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, I think there's about 24 really interesting projects, and then there's 500 other ones, so that could go wrong.
I mean, we've seen 4 years ago, we looked at business models of a certain type of company, and we saw 15 of them come out. We invested in 2 of them, and all of them were zeros. It was just a flawed idea. We have scar tissue from trying to do something in the space. And then I see a white paper for an equivalent company coming out in the ICO, raises money in minutes, huge fanfare, and I'm just shocked that this is a total garbage zero area to invest money. People have banged their heads on this over and over, and it's destined to be a failure, but that's the riskier part of this. A lot of these investors that are coming into these ICOs, they are not professional investors. They don't have 20 years of doing this and 100 failed investments in their back and all the scar tissue to know you don't do this, you do this. And they're coming in wide-eyed and exciting, and they're going to repeat a lot of very kind of naive errors, and it's going to cause a lot of losses there. So the more I think even like the Smith & Crowns and some of these other groups that come out and start adding some more professionalism to research and start highlighting best practices on how you do these ICOs, I think as we get a little more structure and maturity to this, hopefully we ferret out a lot of the more scammy, flaky, hollow companies that are emerging.
It will also be interesting to see, I think now is the time, or this year is the year, when corporations have to prove themselves. Many of them engaged in POCs or use cases or projects with startups. And now, right, the senior management of these larger institutions want to see, was blockchain really effective? Did this really save money? Is this really a new business opportunity? But if that determination is no, then also that could potentially slow things down in terms of overall excitement and adoption of blockchain amongst not just small institutions, but large ones.
True. I mean, there are 2 sides of the activity. On one side, you have what the big companies are doing in terms of implementing blockchain. On the other side, you have startups that start from zero and they want to change the world and make everything better. And these are 2 different sides right now. Okay, good. We have 3 minutes to go. Now we're going to huddle up among us and try to decide for a winner and a runner-up. So give us 2 minutes. It's not going to take long. Could we ask for the sound to be muted from all of these, from us here for 2 minutes, and then we will come back and announce the winners.
Oh, I think the winners
the
are being
announce is
announced tonight.
later.
We circle up after they announce at something this evening.
Okay.
then you probably the value of decentralization is diminished. So how do you see, what solutions do you see to actually create value for enterprises rather than creating value from just the ICOs and the token storage value?
I guess it is when the token is central to the functioning of the network. Like you could see a decentralized Airbnb existing where you don't need to pay Airbnb 20% of all the revenues. Those are coming, and where the token is rewarding the people that are making the network more efficient.
I think the problem with this dichotomy is that the token model and the ICO model rewards the individual. But when we're selling to an enterprise, we're talking about how is this company going to have a reserve of these tokens to pay for these transaction fees? And if they are incentivized, how will that come back on their books? They're 2 different models, and I don't believe that startups trying to sell to enterprise should be having an ICO.
But I agree with that. And if you play out this movie, enterprises are going to be issuing tokens, either to tokenize certain assets, identity, products, whatever. Tokenization is going to happen. How they participate in these new networks, you can foresee them, whether it's Google or Amazon creating some sort of a token, whether it's a native currency, a loyalty point, or something in those ecosystems to experiment as, again, a step in their staircase. But if people think that enterprise customers are going to avoid the tokenization or the I won't say ICO, but the tokenization of stuff, totally wrong. They're going to jump on this train. They're just not the first whippersnappers in the room.
True. It's going to happen starting this week. There's going to be a big announcement of a traditional company that is announcing a token to go into their app. And they already have millions of users. And we're going to see more of that. In the same way as governments used to issue currency, corporations are going to be issuing their own currency. Cryptocurrency. No. One more question, perhaps. There was a hand over there. Do you mind taking the mic and then?
Yes, got it.
Oh, excellent.
1, 2, 3. No. William, you had this spot on with the customer acquisition comment. It is going to be a huge challenge for.
Closer.
Oh, closer. Okay. It is going to be a huge challenge for those companies to start acquiring customers and have the money flow to their bank accounts, right? So you guys work with those startups and you potentially advise them on strategy. And to the point of some companies are implementing blockchain just for the sake of having the blockchain because it's hyped up, right? But those companies that actually do make sense in terms of blockchain technology underlying their business model, what would be your strategy or advice to those companies to start acquiring customers by, either explaining how it works or targeting certain niches or offering some freemium models like please use our product as a pilot or something like that? So what kind of value proposition would they have for that initial customer base acquisition? What would be the strategy? Thank you.
Well, for one, always get a paid pilot and start early. You want to engage with them early, understand what their business processes are, what are the problems they're trying to solve, and then see if your platform will actually fit into that, and then get them to pay for the trial.
Yeah, and enterprise customers have a particular adoption curve of new tech. We saw that with the internet, where they didn't jump on the internet, they built intranets and then extranets, and then kind of went full circle. Seeing the same flight path with blockchain with enterprise, where the first use case is cost reduction, and it's it's like a shared services model. You've seen some consortiums doing some things, and that's interesting. Those consortiums, a big question will be how those consortiums and the utility play out once there's growth models and there's IP and other things that you don't want to be around the same table with competitors that have been stealing customers and employees for 20 years. Kind of hard to do. And so you go from cost to growth to transform. And if you're a market leader, you have some opportunity to maybe transform because you have a lot of kind of market dynamics, a lot of regulatory pull, and a brand that won't last forever. And so you're seeing this other world of kind of crypto and platform and blockchain startups trying to do the same thing. So.
Great. My advice on that is I think blockchain is going to change everything, but you and your two co-founders are probably not going to launch a product that disrupts every single service and vertical on Earth. So just pick one thing, do it right, have people enjoy that, and go from there.
Great. On that note, it's 12:15 and lunch is awaiting. Thank you very much, everybody, especially the startups that presented.